Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action.
Hi, y'all. This is Jerry Williams, a.k.a. TV Jerry. The third annual Richmond Animation Festival returns to the Bird Theater on April 27th at 5:30. Then at 7 p.m., LA animator Lily Carré will present a program of her own animations, followed by a live Q&A. I'll have a link to the festival on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
Jodie Foster was going to play Scarpetta. And then another iteration of it was Angelina Jolie was going to play. And now, of course, Nicole Kidman is playing Scarpetta, and they're filming in Nashville.
That was Virginia Film Office Director Andy Edmunds talking about the Scarpetta series that's set in Richmond but not being shot here. This is Andy's fourth annual look back at Virginia's production industry. This year we'll talk about 2024, including several shows that were shot here, some of the other festivals around the state, and of course we'll talk about Atlantis, the Pharrell Williams movie that was shot here but isn't being released.
Sifter Review of the Week.
Holland on Prime Video. Nicole Kidman and Matthew McFadden play a couple who seem to have an ideal family life in the Dutch-themed Michigan town. As expected, their relationship's underlying unease develops into much more. One of the complications involves her fellow teacher, Gael Garcia Bernal, but any more information will spoil the plot. Kidman centers the movie with her suspicious, flighty wife, while McFadden embodies the supportive husband-father. Mimi Cave, who also directed Fresh, starts with the normal and subverts it. She takes her time unfolding the story, which does have elements of predictability. I guessed the twist pretty early on. The production design must be noted. Their home is crammed with kitschy details in a nod to the culture of the Midwestern town. The music has strong elements of 50s melodrama merged with Hitchcock scores. The slow burn disruption of a seemingly happy world has been done before with better writing, but this film benefits from the performances of Kidman and Bernal and is sufficiently involving. The irony of the movie is that even though Holland is a real Michigan town, most of this film, including the Tulip Time Festival, was actually shot in Tennessee, where Kidman lives. I gave Holland 3 out of 5 stars. All right, Mr. Andy Edmunds, welcome back to Sifter for the Ear. Going on year 4.
Wow, Jerry. But, it's actually for you and I, it's going on like year 30.
Something like that. Great, I know.
we've been in this business a while, right? We've been doing this at some level.
But no, you were the first podcast when I started Sifter for the Ear, January 2022, and here we are, March 2025, and you've been on the show at least 4 times for your annual catch-up, and here we are catching up again.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad the first podcast and my presence didn't mess it up for the rest of them. So there you go.
So how was the year?
It's a very complicated time of disruption in our industry. And we might have talked about this before, but, storytelling over the years, it used to take 100,000 monks to transcribe literature, right? Then the printing press came out, and the work of 100,000 monks was then executed by 100 printing presses. So we're at I believe, a similar transition point in storytelling where these tools are going to liberate the single artist to be able to make amazing work. And unfortunately, the collaborative process that we know and love may change some because the single artist will be collaborating with these, basically these robots. Right. It's for a while going to be this hybrid process. But as I go and, I go speak to film students at different schools around Virginia, and it's amazing how many young people are excited and interested to be in this space of storytelling. And we want to inspire them and help them.
It's interesting because I know because you listen to every podcast, I've probably interviewed at least 10 filmmakers, some of them younger, some of them a little older, who are doing exactly what you're saying. They're creating their own film. They do have a crew to shoot it, but they're self-distributing, they're self-marketing. So that's actually, I see that happening right here in Richmond, which is great, I guess, in a way, because it does empower those people to tell their stories.
It does empower the people to tell the stories, and it definitely helps a filmmaker. Perhaps they can do a proof of concept short using these tools, and then that can lead to a larger physical production, right? Employing more people, which is, obviously our mission at the film office is trying to employ as many people as possible in this space and the economic impact. I think what has happened in our industry in the last 3 years, Jerry, and we may have talked about it some last year in our last visit, that during the strikes, the Writers Guild strike and the SAG strike, a lot of the big studio work became more comfortable with filming overseas just because of the economics. And what happened is, while the strikes were prohibiting them from filming in the United States of America, they started growing more of a crew base over in Hungary and Romania and other places. So they were able to go over and execute the work at a fraction of the cost. And so when the strikes were over, the horse was already out of the barn. The studios were used to filming over in the UK and also, Australia right now, you can make a $10 million movie in Australia for like $4 million with the exchange rate and with the incentive. So it's impossible to compete with that. So what we're seeing, unfortunately, at the studio level, and Netflix and it being one of the major ones, is that the globalization is not unlike the steel industry in the United States of America that just left because just the cost was undeniable, the cost savings. So I can't remember, Jerry, if you've done a review of The Brutalist yet.
You read it. You forgot you read it, but you read it.
Of course, I read all of them. And I looked at it and I said, man, this movie must have cost, $75, $80, $90 million just because of this. Less than 10, I've heard. And when I heard that, it just blew me away. But it's a brilliant example, and a sad example of the cost difference in going over to Eastern Europe. But the good news is, I believe the independent film is going to have a bit of a resurgence, because I believe the consumer like story-driven things that make them feel something, that are more human and that are not these comic book IP-driven things. And I think there is an audience for that, but there needs to be a way to make sure that is continued to be monetized in a way where the storytellers can afford to do it, and the people that finance it can afford to make some money off of it. Because I think to the big system of distribution, theatrically, and then even streaming, that they're so profit driven that some of these movies are just too small. So somehow the ecosystem needs to be able to support this indie film movement that I think will continue and start to grow even more. Because, for me in Virginia, I would personally rather see us do 5 small $5 million movies than one $25 million movie, because the 5 movies will employ more Virginians for more days at a higher level of the food chain, as opposed to a $25 million movie that will come in and bring in more of their key positions and might have a total of 55 days of shooting. But 5 smaller movies might be 5 20-day shoots. So that's 100 days of shooting.
Plus, you're also encouraging these younger filmmakers, or newer filmmakers, hopefully, to do work here and then come back here. You're supporting a whole new generation, hopefully, of filmmakers.
Well, and that's right. And that's actually been, one of our strategies for years, the film office too, is we go to New York. We will support NYU film students coming down, and we especially support, our cinema students here in Virginia, but NYU film students being such a prestigious film school, we will help them with locations, with their short, because then we become ingratiated to them for future opportunities. And that's happened a couple of times. And you want people to want to come back. A lot of our work, as over the years, has been repeat customers, that have come to Virginia and had a great experience with our super talented crew, and they want to come back. But then the economic reality gets in the way. No matter how good our crew is, no matter how great our locations are, no matter how easy and we can cut through red tape for them to do certain things, the economic reality is what it is. And if you do not have an incentive program that is at least competitive, they can't make the decision to come here. So as we've discussed ad nauseum over the years, we have a nominal incentive program compared to our competition of Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Maryland, Louisiana. But we're very thankful for the tools we have. If we run out of fuel, then opportunities that should film here and want to film here have to go somewhere else.
What about Scarpetta?
Footnote.
Scarpetta is the name of the forensic pathologist in Patricia Cornwell's popular series of mysteries. Cornwell used to live in Richmond, where she based the books.
Oh, that was the most recent heartbreaking thing that Actually, our office has been kind of tracking that for 30 years. At one point, Patsy, she wanted to direct it, right? And so the studios didn't want to go down that pathway over the years. And at one point, Jerry, it had Jodie Foster was going to play Scarpetta. And then at one another iteration of it was Angelina Jolie was going to play. And now, of course, Nicole Kidman is playing Scarpetta, and they're filming in Nashville for multiple reasons. One is the incentive, because this is Blumhouse, right? Blumhouse is producing this, and Blumhouse were great customers of ours and clients of ours and friends of ours, because we did The Good Lord Bird here with Blumhouse.
Footnote.
The Good Lord Bird was a 2020 miniseries starring Ethan Hawke as James Brown, who fought against American slavery.
When Scarpetta was coming into development, we had discussions about it, and it was just clear we did not have enough incentive to compete with Tennessee. That was definitely a heartbreaker, that they're going to be shooting Nashville
as Richmond.
Richmond.
So you brought up the big subject, of course, we always have to talk about, and you mentioned it briefly. The legislature just closed. What was the situation on incentives and other things for this year, for the future, for the film office?
You're probably better off to talk to the trade association related to the incentive effort, because here at the film office, we're not allowed to really lobby the legislators because we're a state agency. But I can tell you, just from an informational point of view, that there was an effort to increase the tax credit by $2.5 million for one legislator, and another had a $1.5 million bump in the tax credit. The budget is yet to be signed, but the final version of the budget that has gone through the conferee process has an increase of $1 million in the Governor's Motion Picture Opportunity Fund. But in fact, what that $1 million was restoring $1 million that was removed on the last budget. So it's put us to a point where the amount available in the incentive program was $5 million per year in the grant pool and $6.5 million available in the tax credit pool. So that's 11.5 total. The way the incentives work, they don't get a dime until they've already spent an audited dollar, right? So according to studies, that $11 million will produce about $110 million worth of economic impact throughout the economy. But it does have a tax cost too, a tax revenue cost. So it's not all rainbows and puppy dogs. It creates wonderful GDP value in so many different businesses, but there is a revenue tax cost that it kicks back that is a cost on revenue relative to what we write the check for. But to put it in context again, say if we have $11.5 million a year, North Carolina has $31 million. West Virginia has a no cap tax credit, no limit. In Georgia, they paid out $1.2 billion in 1 year for tax credits to induce work. So we're competing against $1.2 billion a year, and we have about $11.5 million.
So what does Virginia, what do y'all do to sell it?
We have no lack of inquiries that want to film in Virginia, right? So it's just a limited number of shows that we can accommodate.
Right.
So we have to use that money as efficiently as we possibly can. And we've been super efficient, that some of our competition is like, how did you guys get that movie? Because of our trust with the clients, they'd be willing to wait a couple of years for the tax credit to be available again. So it's a hard way to run an industry when you're working on post-dated checks, for the work that happens today. It's just a really complicated way. But especially coming out of the pandemic, that was the only way to do it, to kind of jumpstart some economic activity. Coming out of the pandemic, the first tourists to really come into Virginia and start spending money in hotels, it was film production people. It was Walking Dead, Dope Sick, Swagger. Right. They figured out a way to work safely during the pandemic, and they started spending a lot of money. And they spent, direct spending of about $120 million coming out of COVID right into Virginia's economy. So that was a great thing for the tourism industry. But that, cost us money that we had to commit out for a couple of years. What's kind of troubling right now, Jerry, is that it's not a real target-rich environment right now. I know colleagues in other states that have $20 million sitting in the bank that they can't even give away. They can't even find the project to use it right now because there's not as many projects out there. Now, we have a couple we're working on right now.
That you won't tell me about.
No, but I love you anyway, Jerry. But I don't like to jinx them.
I don't blame you. Let me ask you about some of the ones that were here last year. Griffin in Summer.
I tell you what, Griffin and Summer, I don't know if you've seen it
No,
yet,
no.
but it is quite hilarious and very well written, very well executed. And that was shot here. Actually, it was shot the year before last, but it came to Tribeca last year, and it won Best Feature at Tribeca, which is quite an achievement. And Melanie Linsky is
I
in
know.
it, from Yellow Jackets. That is a movie, an example of what one can do for not millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Well, let's talk about the big project that came and sadly is never going to be seeing the light of the screen at this point, Atlantis.
Footnote.
Atlantis was the film about Pharrell Williams' childhood, directed by Michael Gondry, best known for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. How was the experience of shooting it first? Let's talk about that before we talk about the fact that it's never going to be seen.
I worked on that movie for 7 years.
Wow.
So it started off in a different studio and then was, sold to Universal. And so different iterations of it starting and stopping. And then, it was moving into an aggressive, direction towards going into production. And we had a certain line producer that was doing the budget. And so start working with that line producer. And then that went away for a while. And then the strikes came. And then they got another line producer. And so, you develop a new relationship with these new line producers that do new budgets. So it's a whole new sales job to do each time. So then the second line producer came in, and then she goes away to work on Mangold's movie.
Complete Unknown?
Yeah, Complete Unknown. So she left. And so then we had the third line producer came in. So I had to develop a whole new relationship with this really major line producer who's done a lot of big movies all over the world. And we got them to come here because their strategy could very easily have been, hey, we're going to shoot this thing in Atlanta on a soundstage and then just come to Virginia for 3 or 4 days to shoot Virginia Beach. So that's what they were leaning towards because it would have been more cost effective for them to do that. But, God bless Pharrell. He wanted to shoot it in Virginia, but math is math, right? So we finally had to figure it out. And with a partnership with VCU, because VCU owned the big ABC warehouse over there behind the Diamond, and they were getting ready to tear it down. But fortunately, our colleagues at VCU were willing to hold off on tearing it down so we could use it again for this movie. So it became the soundstage that we used initially for Swagger, right? So then we used it for Michel Gondry and his wild imagination for this movie. So, during production, it was amazing to see what came out of Michel Gondry's mind and how he wanted to tell this story, and a story about pursuing your dream and art and community and love and Virginia. I mean, it was basically a postcard to Virginia in there too. And it was a musical, right? And some of the musical numbers were great. And the dance numbers and the talent, the cast, it was really a magical experience. In my years of doing this, I've never seen anything like this where, the artist decided not to release a feature film. It happens all the time on pilots, for TV pilots. You go, you make it, you spend all this time. I mean, we did a huge TV pilot, Jerry, with Taylor Hackford, amazing film director.
Footnote.
Taylor Hackford is a film director known for An Officer and a Gentleman and Ray, which won Best Director and Picture in 2004. Interestingly, he's been married to Helen Mirren since 1997.
For CBS, and we shot it down in Hampton and never saw the light of day, right? So I'm used to that. So we really had hopes and expectations that would be the value.
Were there any other major movies or shows shot here last year that you want to mention?
Well, there were pieces of movies that we shot up in Northern Virginia that are more DC-related things, like the De Niro movie that's out.
0 Day.
Yeah. There's a little bit in Northern Virginia along the bridges. And we're involved sometimes in some of that, helping with the Park Service and bridges and the Virginia side of things occur. And what was really exciting too this year is that there were some independent films that filmmakers in Richmond and Hampton Roads did, like, Max Fisher, who's just a well-known, super experienced cinematographer, was able to shoot his thriller film Saturnalia, that because of where they shot it at Goochland County out of Dover Hall, that they really were able to put a lot of production value into that story and make it look like a really bigger than what their cost was. You've got other producers like Seth Wood has created a brand with his show called Corn War, because Seth has been able to, in an entrepreneurial way, find a niche, right? And monetize it and be able to go out and tell stories and interview people and create a model that works, right? Another little movie that shot here last year, there's a producer out of Charlottesville named Teddy Grennan. He runs the Sun Valley Film Festival out in Idaho, but he lives around Charlottesville. And Teddy's an energetic ball of energy and creative force. And he did a movie called Catch a Killer. Not like the two Catch a Killers on Netflix right now. This is a different Catch a Killer. Who knows? They'll probably have a different title by the time it goes out. But this was a pretty low budget project, but in the thriller realm. He's on 3 shows here now in Virginia, and he's got another little thing he's working on. So we want to nurture our homegrown creators and at the same time create an environment where we can keep the crew here. Because right now, I mean, people are struggling. I mean, there are people I know that haven't worked in a year and a half. Well, they haven't worked on like a show that pays their health care. Right. You know, people have been able to piece together commercials and other production work. But, you know, as you know, Jerry, it's been some form of that for years where people that work on the crew, you know, they might go work in concerts and other theatrical things in between movies that would come in. Unless you have enough volume, like when we had Wagger, Walking Dead, Dope Sick filming at the same time, you know, then people will complain, hey, man, there's too much work.
Yeah, that doesn't happen often.
Like, yeah, I know, but, you know, it's happened a few times when we had a couple shows going back to back, and, you know, people go, well, why couldn't you know, stagger them out? I mean, we can't control when those things are ready to go. You know, what am I going to do? Say, no, please don't come? I mean, but we do have 3 promising things on the horizon and different kind of lining up in different ways that hopefully we'll be able to snag in here. And also, you know, we got Ken Burns coming in here pretty soon. He shot a bunch of his American Revolution series here in Virginia, many locations around Virginia. And then, of course, you know, our other mission is we support film festivals all around the state. There's over 30 of them now. You know, people to kind of expand their point of view and expand their minds and create a new way to go experience something different with your friend or loved one. You know, go to one of these other film festivals outside of your home base, you know, but definitely support your ones locally. But like go to the Washington West Film Festival, for example. Their whole mission is about helping children and helping foster kids. And it's one of the only film festivals in the country that is completely nonprofit. Last year, they had the anniversary of Footloose, right? And Kevin Bacon came with his band, his brother's band, and they played a show. That would be one to check out. I mean, there's film festivals out in Bristol.
Abington, everybody's got, everybody's.
Yeah, Abington's got a great film festival. And I know that in Norfolk, there's talk of really ramping up a focus on comedy. And William & Mary has a great festival. So anyway, go out to a festival. You know, engage in Virginia travel around going to a film festival.
There you go. Is there anything we haven't had a chance to discuss about last year in Richmond's production world that you want to mention?
At the Film Office, we want to thank our partners in government that have helped us execute complicated things. For example, especially the city of Hopewell. When we filmed Atlantis, they dressed up that location as Virginia Beach in the 70s. And they built a Peppermint Beach Club and all this. It was an amazing experience. And the city was so helpful to be able to do that work. And we had dance numbers in the street. And it was just a great impact for the city. You know, a lot of money was spent there while they were filming. But it required a lot of cooperation from partners down there. So we thank our tourism contacts, our economic development contacts, police, fire, everyone. And in Richmond, too. And in Richmond, we were shooting several areas around Richmond and Henrico. Fort Lannis was super helpful, especially, you know, out in Eastern Henrico apartment complex. We shot there for like 8 days, day and night, till 4 or 5 in the morning. You know, it was a big deal. It really impacted the community there. And we appreciate their tolerance of putting up with lights and stuff, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning. So not only just for Atlantis, but for all the work we do and when we call upon location owners from time to time to open their home and their business to allow production to happen. We just really thank everyone for doing that.
As you know, my last question always is, when you get a little time on your hands, what have you been watching? Oh, and most important, and this unfortunately is airing after the Oscars, so we'll already know, what's your pick for Best Feature?
What's my pick for Best Feature? I was just blown away by The Brutalist and how efficiently he made it. So I think I would vote for The Brutalist. Honora was amazing.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, Honora was amazing as well.
I think Sean Baker's a real talent.
Sean Baker's super brilliant. And so is Brady Corbet. That was a movie, even though it was 3.5 hours long and had the intermission. I thought at intermission it was going to give me an opportunity to sneak out of there.
Yeah,
but I really was looking forward to the second half.
Yeah.
For that reason, for Brady Corbet to bring back the scope and scale of going to a movie, that's why my vote would be for The Brutalist. But what am I watching? There's been some great stuff. Severance is I'm still on the Severance kick.
Yeah,
Weird,
everybody's
man.
saying that. I've never been a fan of it, and everybody says it's just really getting weird this season.
Well, it has gotten weird this season. What else did I just watch that I really liked?
Did you ever watch Zero Day yet?
Oh, yeah, I did watch
It was
Zero
okay.
Day. Yeah, I watched all Zero Day. You know what's interesting? Fun fact about Zero Day, that Oval Office that's in Zero Day,
Right.
that is our Oval Office for Virginia.
Wow. Where is it living now?
We rented it to the production and used some of the funds from that rental to support the Virginia Production Alliance and all the events that they hold to do, kind of community events to create relationships among filmmakers. So just a great use. I mean, the thing was sitting in a trailer here in Virginia, right, in a semi. So why not use it and rent it? So actually, it's been used on a couple of different shows in New York, and they're still holding it for, I don't know if I should say that, but another kind of big streaming show.
Almost got you. Got you on that one.
It's a big streaming show that they're going to use it and giving us another decent check, right?
It's in the semi. They just drive it to whatever soundstage they want to, and then construct it there, put it together.
Yes, and it's been in actually two different sound stages in New York. Now it's at one particular sound stage, and it remains standing from Zero Day. Now, look, we don't like it necessarily going out of state because we like to use it as a marketing tool.
Of course.
So we didn't have anything on the horizon that needed an Oval Office, right? I mean, of course, our first attempt was like, hey, sure, you could use the Oval Office, come down and film these scenes here in Virginia. But they're like, no way. They're not going to come for 2 days to film the Oval Office. And that is an example of us being a very effective hoarder of sets, because that set, Jerry, came from Disney and First Kid Sinbad movie from 1992, I believe.
Wow.
And we have held on to that set, and it's had so many presidents, including Chris Christopherson, Tina Davis, Jeff Bridges.
Well, Andy, as always, it's been fascinating and informative to hear from you, and maybe we'll have some exciting news before next year to come back to.
No, we will. And it's always great talking to you, Jerry. Thanks so much for keeping the community together and everything you provide for them.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. That was Virginia Film Office Director Andy Edmunds, back on the show for his 4th annual look back at Virginia's production industry.
Coming soon. In theaters.
The Accountant 2. Ben Affleck is back in the title role as he sets out to solve a murder with the help of his estranged but lethal brother, played by John Bernthal. Until Dawn. A group of friends is trapped in a time loop where mysterious foes are chasing down and killing them in gruesome ways, and the only way to survive is to live till dawn. Cheech and Chong's last movie, Keep Smoking. This is the weed-smoking duo's new documentary, but as expected, it doesn't take the traditional approach. There's animation, archival madness, and never-before-seen footage. On Swift Horses, Muriel and her husband Lee are about to begin a bright new life, which is upended by the arrival of Lee's brother. Starring Daisy Edgar Jones, Jacob Elordi, and Will Poulter. The Shrouds. The latest from writer-director David Cronenberg stars Vincent Cassell as a grieving widow who builds a device to connect with the dead inside a burial shroud. A Nice Indian Boy. This gay rom-com revolves around a man who brings his fiancée home to meet his traditional Indian family. The fact that he's white is the first surprise. Then they decide to have a traditional Indian wedding with Karan Soni and Jonathan Groff.
TV and streaming.
Étoile on Prime. 2 struggling ballet companies, one in New York and one in Paris, decide to boost their business by trading their star dancers. From Daniel Palladino and Amy Sherman Palladino, best known for Mrs. Maisel and Gilmore Girls. Havoc on Netflix. Tom Hardy plays a detective who has to fight his way through the criminal underworld to save a politician's son. Directed by Gareth Evans, known for Gangs of London and the Raid movies. Ironheart on Disney. Dominique Thorne reprises her role as teen tech genius and MIT student Riri Williams in the upcoming 6-episode miniseries. Bullet Train Explosion on Netflix. This is a remake of the 1975 thriller about a Tokyo-bound train that's threatened with a bomb if it slows down. You on Netflix. This is the final season, starring Penn Badgley as the romantic obsessive killer. Next week, longtime meteorologist John Bernier will be here to talk about his career and what's next. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sister, including literally thousands of reviews,
Visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.